Hello and welcome to Mabinda TV. So for now, I like to look at the Kenyan situation. So how do you think the 2027 elections will play out? Will Ruto be a one-term president? That is, will President William Ruto be a one-term president? Of course, you have opposition leaders are all gathering in order to support one candidate, and if they unite, then basically you will have President William Ruto being a one-term president. And I think if he becomes a one-term president, then I think according to Martha Karua, she says Kenya needs a series of one-term presidents. And so that's how these presidents are going to take their job seriously. And I think if President Ruto is a one-term president, then the leader who will come along will say, let me do my job well. That is how I will be able to become a one-term president. So I think right now for President Ruto, why is he on a campaign mode? Always, basically, he always says, tutatenga, tutafanya. Why does he use such words? He's the president, he's the commander in chief, he's the one in charge. So basically, I think that needs to change. The president needs to. So, what does the opposition need to do? Number one, register as many supporters as possible. In the last election, 8 million Kenyans did not vote. That is 8 million Kenyans did not vote, and that is more than what William Ruto got. That is 7.1 million votes. If you combine with the votes that Raila Odinga got, 6.9 million votes, then that shows you that Ruto is basically a minority president. So these are the steps for William Ruto to become a one-term president. Basically, he needs to know that basically the opposition needs to register, and the Tukokadi movement I think is a good place to begin. The Tukokadi movement is all about the opposition registering as many people as possible to be able to vote. So that is the Tukokadi movement, of course, began by Alan Sademba. Then, of course, the second thing that needs to happen, the opposition needs to know, the opposition needs to field only one candidate. And I think maybe we don't need to import an angel. We can settle on the present crop of leaders and then have the power of institutions restrain them. So, of course, I think likely it is Kalonzo Musyoka that will be chosen to be the opposition Flagbearer. Of course, he has been in the system. He was first elected an MP in 1986, so that is 40 years in politics. Of course, some will say this is a long time to be able to get trained, but who else can we get? You have William Ruto telling Kalonzo that there is no tarmac road to his home. Of course, that's an indictment of Kalonzo. Then, of course, you have Fred Matiang'i, who liberalized the education sector, made the education sector turn out to be fine. He basically remodeled the education sector. That is Fred Matiang'i, and of course, then of course you have the Ruaraka land saga maybe doing him in, and of course the Riviala dumping of bodies. So that is Fred Matiang'i, and then of course you have which other one? Which other Kashago? Of course, is barred from running for being impeached. Of course, that bars him from seeking public office, but he will be the kingmaker. Of course, whoever he supports, then we largely get the Mount Kenya votes. Of course, we are not still sure. We are not still sure whether Ruto has lost all of the support in Mount Kenya, but it appears he has lost quite a chunk of votes from the Mount Kenya region, that is William Ruto, and of course, that just means that the, that just means that Gachagua has to do more in order to rally to be the Mount Kenya kingpin. Of course, those two. Then, of course, you have David Maraga. He is clean, but of course, then he does not have a type of backing. So basically, the Kisii votes having been taken by Fred Matiang'i, and of course, you have Okiya Mtata activism has helped him, but then of course, he does not have a type of backing. So that's the tragedy of the Kenyan politics. And of course, we have which other candidate do we have? Of course, you also have Okiya Mtata. You have Boniface Mwangi, of course, an activist, but then of course. he does not have a tribal backing. So we need a new lease of life. I want Kenya to be like in 2002 election. This 2027 ballot should be like the 2002 election. In 2002, after opposition leader Mike Kibaki was elected president, the conservative weekly news magazine, The Economist, termed Kenya as a beacon of hope in Africa. So basically, we were termed as a beacon of hope in Africa. So that was it. Then, of course, in 2002, after the opposition win, Kenyans were termed the most optimistic people in the world. We were the happiest people in the world after the 2002 election. After the 2002 election, you had the late cabinet minister Karisa Maiza openly sweeping the streets in a newfound sense of servant leadership. And of course, you have in 2002, after the win by Mwai Kibaki, you have the citizens openly arresting corrupt police officers. So that was the 2002 moment for Kenya. Can we recreate the 2002 moment in 2027 so that you can have Kenyans have found a new spirit? Of course, that 2002 moment was spoiled by the Mount Kenya mafia who surrounded Kibaki after he had won the election. And of course, then you had them as the others, such as Raila Odinga, went out to work. Then, of course, you had the Mount Kenya mafia remain behind and begin to plot on how they could capture power. And of course, if Kibaki had treated Raila Odinga well, Raila Odinga wouldn't have mounted a challenge on the Kibaki presidency in 2007. 2007 post-election violence will not have happened. So basically, that's it for now. Do you think the 2027 can we recreate the 2002 moment in can we recreate the 2002 moment in 2027? So bye for now. Bye for now.